Okay, welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show, and we're happy to have Carolyn Daly. She's a partner and chair in family law group Cohen Seglias, and hopefully I didn't screw that up again. Welcome, Carolyn.
Welcome, thanks. Nice meeting, nice seeing you. Nice seeing you, Dane.
Okay, so Carolyn trademarked the phrase divorce without drama, which seems almost unlikely, but she spent nearly 30 years in New Jersey family law, backing it up, handling everything from high conflict custody battles to dividing cryptocurrency in a divorce. And she ran her own firm for 13 years before merging into Cohen Seglias to build something bigger. And only 2% of attorneys in the state hold the Supreme Court certification that she carries. So you thought you were going to be a prosecutor. And then a month before your clerkship started, a judge moved you to family court, and then you just never left. So what happened in those first weeks that hooked you into doing that instead?
Oh, I always like to tell people family law picked me. I didn't necessarily pick it. I mean, I ended up clerking in family. I liked it. There were a lot of issues that were very interesting and different, so you weren't really ever bored. Then I went to my first job and did a lot of different areas of law, family being one of them, but I also did, civil litigation, criminal, all kinds of different litigation. And then at one point I thought, family seems hard, right? It seems hard. It's high conflict usually. Maybe I should go do something else. And then I was approached to become a partner in a firm. And I said, and that firm was only family law, I mean, largely and only family law. And I said, okay, well, this seems like a good opportunity. And perhaps this is where I should be doing and spending most of my time. So that's what I did.
So I always have a bunch of questions, but then I come back to them. But then I think of things when you're answering the questions, so
Yeah,
I'd go totally off my script. So the phrase "divorce without drama." So you trademarked that phrase,
I
but
did.
tell me, so that must mean something more than just a trademark, or just a
Absolutely.
marketing slogan. You were something was running through your head when you came up with that. So let's talk about that because it must be a big thing.
Sure, it is. So I would say probably 10 years into practicing family law, I began to realize that people spend a lot of time in conflict and often in high conflict, and things become emotional, which then translates into much more drama and lengthy process and less money and children who are in the middle of high conflict. And I said, we have to do this differently. And so I wanted to sort of get the mindset to the public that you could do this differently without all of the drama. And so I would say my colleagues probably view me as a litigator. I have been, but for many years I have been working to transition myself more into what we call ADR, alternate dispute resolution,
Hmm.
and doing mediation and arbitration because you truly can have a better divorce, if that's even such a thing, if you handle your issues outside of the courtroom in mediation or arbitration. And why? Because you still have control. You either in a mediation you control the outcome, right? You get the outcome that you want or you don't settle. And in an arbitration, you control the process. So you're picking your judge and how this is going to be handled. Is it going to be done really quickly? Do you need to pause in the middle of it because there's other things that need to be handled? You handle how you get divorced. And in this, I would say in this day and age, it's just such a much better process for people than
Hmm.
going to court and fighting. I mean, I happen to be in New Jersey, and I will tell you, it takes years from start to finish, and not a year, years to get divorced. And I just don't know that anybody does better in that process than by taking charge and either mediating or arbitrating.
So if you're broke, how do you get a divorce if it takes years?
Hmm. Very difficult. I mean, you then end up sitting in the process, or you end up being pro se and hoping at some point that you get in front of a judge who's going to make the decisions. And you have to prepare for that trial all by yourself. And that's not easy. I mean, we do have, in New Jersey specific, we do have a process which is called early settlement panel. And in an ESP, you get the opportunity to meet with two lawyers who will give you their thoughts on how to settle it. It's not binding, it's really just a voluntary process by the lawyers. I happen to do that work, but and then hopefully that will help you get your case resolved. But if it doesn't, then you are going to wait in line to get before a judge and then have a trial and then await a decision. So it's not easy. But if you're broke and I mean, not entirely broke, you can hire a mediator. The two of you can go and in, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 sessions, get divorced.
Okay. So let me go back and pull from some of my
Yeah,
pre-written prepared stuff. So you ran Daly and Associates for 13 years.
I did.
What moment made you realize you hit the ceiling of what a solo firm could do? Was there something that happened?
Yeah, I would say that I was looking in the mirror one day and I was exhausted and I was working nights and weekends and all the time. And, when you run your own, you don't really have a sense of, okay, well, now you need more help. Now you need more help. You do, but you don't, it's a process. And then I finally said, I need to go left, go west, young man. I needed to go left and make a change because I felt like I could not myself do any more in my firm. I had hired, people to work with me. I had an associate who's now a partner with me at the firm I'm at. And, it was just at some point you have to be able to not work every minute of the day. And it's not just the work, right? It's not just the practice of law, it's the running of a practice,
Hmm.
which is,
Yes.
I mean, listen, I love that part of it. I love the business of law. I did that well, I think. It put me where I am, and both personally and professionally. And I think at some point I just said, I need to be somewhere where I have a bigger platform to work with, where I have a team that will be supporting me and doing all the things that I am doing and building it. And so I went from myself and an associate to now myself, a partner, and 2 associates. So, and we're still hiring.
So you're still a mid-size firm, but now you share the responsibility, and you're a principal or partner and chair. So
Yeah.
you share the responsibility of the business side of things with,
Yes.
and people don't even think about the business side of, that you're actually running a business, not just
Yeah.
being a lawyer, and that's a whole different hat to wear and all
Yeah.
the rest of that.
And listen, they will always tell you, I don't know how many, lawyers or doctors you interview, but like people always say lawyers and doctors are not the best business people often.
Yeah.
So, when you're so busy practicing and you're not paying attention to the business, it's not as successful as it can be.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, there's only so much time to go around. So you said you were the chief cook and bottle washer. That's a term that I often have used in the past. What was the most draining non-legal part of running it?
Oh gosh, tech. I would say dealing with the tech and sort of the infrastructure, the technology, whether it was, are we going to go to the cloud? Are we going to stay on a server? Somebody can't get into their computer today, having to do that. And then just the infrastructure of the business, what's the billing programs you're going to use? How many, how are the bills going to get changed? And then some of it's even just the collections and following up and, making sure all of that is done. That's the part that I think gets tedious.
So you merged your firm with Cohen Seglias, and
Hmm.
I'm just I almost screwed that up about 4 times, but I think I made it through each time.
You did. You
Uh,
did.
did I'm sure most people do screw that up, or
Yeah.
maybe half and half.
No, more often than not.
So walk me through how that deal came together. How'd you end up? Did they approach you? You approach them? How did that whole deal come
So
together?
yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I have, I think when you reach a certain level in your profession, headhunters will reach out to you or firms will reach out to you. They'll send you an email, they'll make a phone call, and people will reach out and say, "Hey, I have this firm that's interested. Would you be interested?" Or, "Hey, we're looking to expand." And I did have conversations over the years. I'm always going to have a conversation. I mean, like, why wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
you? But I wasn't really ready to do any of that until I had reached the point where I looked in the mirror and said, you got to go west. And then I reached out to a headhunter that I knew and had been friends with. And then I reached out to someone who had transitioned from being a lawyer into being a headhunter and who was more in the beginning of her career. And I said, I called her. I still remember the call. I called her and I said, "Hi, I'm like, just want to introduce and have a conversation." She's like, "Oh, are you looking for an associate?" I said, "No, I'm looking for you to find me a home." And she was sort of like floored because I don't think anyone thought I was going to do what I did.
Mhm.
And she introduced me to a couple of firms, as did the other headhunter, and I had conversations with a few of them, and I picked this one because I find them to be the most business oriented, if that makes sense, like business minded, um, and growth minded. And they didn't have a family law department, so they were like, "Yeah, you come in and you build it." And I said, "So I don't lose all my autonomy, right?" One of the things people say when you
Yeah.
join a bigger firm is you lose your autonomy.
Yes.
Well, true, if you join a firm that has all these existing and you're just becoming somebody else on the team, but if you go in and build the department from scratch, you are going to be autonomous. Like, they don't know what a family law department is. They never had one. So you get to be the one who's like has the autonomy to do that. And that to me was an interesting puzzle, right? I love a good challenge, and that made it interesting to me. Okay, how do you build a department? Like how are we going to go about doing that?
So
Staffing
you're
and having all the right technology. But yeah,
so you're building, but you have you have more of the support on the back end, so that
yeah,
you're doing less of the business part of that, but more of the putting
I think
together, solving the actual problems that are going on between
yeah.
couples.
I mean, so the other part is that I get to think about the business of building a department, right? And I'm not sending out the bills or doing the marketing or, hiring the people. Like that's all done, right? I'm not paying my people anymore. I mean, so all of that is no longer on my plate to deal with. I now have some more space to be able to think through, how do I want to build this department? What is the business of this department? Like, what are we going to do? What type of a department are we going to do? And, one of the things that I said to everyone when I joined was, understand I'm building a department, and thank you for giving me the latitude for that. But I'm not in the business of like acquiring bodies. Like, we're not just hiring to hire. We are going to be strategic, and we're going to think about this, and we're going to put together the right department in for family law that will fit within a larger firm, that will be interesting and do really good work for the clients that we represent.
So let's talk about the idea of so most people think when you're getting a divorce, you're going to a court and it's going to be a fight. And then you talked about alternative methods of making that happen. So tell me how that fits in, what your vision is there at Cohen Seglias.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to do when I built this department was I wanted to be able to focus more on the ADR. I've been doing it for years, but I was also the one trying the cases, arguing the motions, going to court all the time. I mean, I just finished a trial. But I said I need to be able to build a team around me or with me that is going to actually be those people who will now be the ones that go to court. People with that skill set that are going to be the trial lawyers that are going to be in court more, so that I can step out and do more of the mediation and arbitration and help people get through this process much better. So that's what I've been able to do. I have my partner really is a trial lawyer and is a really excellent trial lawyer. And I just hired someone else in who's she's a counsel, senior counsel, and she's got 10 years experience, but she loves to go to court and be in court. And I said, great, then you are going to be the people who go to court 95% of the time. I'm sure there will be some times that I still do, but I will now be able to focus more on how do we get people to understand, if court is necessary, great, we can do that, but you really have a better process and outcome if you do this outside the courthouse. I mean, judges have certain rules, right? They have to decide cases based on the statutes, the
Mhm.
court rules, and the case law. In a process like mediation, not so much the arbitration, but in mediation, you can be as creative as you want in resolving this. You can solve for things that the court is never going to have the time to even think about. And it just makes your outcome that much better for you and your family. I don't know why more people wouldn't do it.
So, for somebody who's saying, "Well, mediation, arbitration, what is all that stuff?" Can you kind of go
Yeah.
run through, some basics on
Yeah,
the difference between
absolutely.
mediation and arbitration?
Yeah. So mediation, you hire a professional who is going to be the facilitator. That's the person who's going to talk to the two of you about potential resolutions, positions, issues, and help you talk through and figure out what your solution might be. Um, They may offer suggestions. Well, we could do this for alimony, or maybe the parenting time could look like this. But ultimately, the two of you, within what you're hoping to accomplish, make the decision at the end of it. It's non-binding. You can leave mediation at any point you want. If it doesn't work for you, you can leave and go to court. Like, if this didn't work, go to court then. But why would you try? If you think that there's an ability to resolve, or at least to have a conversation, then go to mediation, have someone help you. I call it like facilitate, but facilitate the settlement and give you suggestions. People often say, well, my husband hates me, or my wife hates me, and we can't even sit in the same room. We can't have these conversations. And I say, that doesn't mean you can't mediate, because I mediate with people in separate rooms if that has to happen at some point, and I work between them. But if your goal is to do the best for yourself and your family, and to avoid spending the amount of money you will spend in court, and come out with an outcome that really is better, why wouldn't you do this? Like, why wouldn't you come and try to mediate before you go do the other? Arbitration is a little different in the sense that you're picking your decision maker. So in arbitration, the end result is you get a decision on all the issues you can't resolve. But in arbitration, you get to pick the person who is going to make the decisions on your case and how you're going to present it. Some cases don't require that you come in and have a formal trial, right? Like, you have two lawyers, call witnesses, submit evidence, objections, motions, all that. Some cases don't really need that. Some issues don't need that. They just need to have each side make a submission in terms of what it is that they are seeking, and somebody make a decision. And you can do that in arbitration. I think one of the biggest misconceptions in arbitration, I'll give you two. One is, oh my gosh, it's final. I can never appeal. That's very scary. It's final. First, if you want the right to appeal, I can build that in. We can build into the arbitration agreement, which is an agreement to arbitrate, like your right to appeal. I try to tell people, I'm not sure why you want the right to appeal, because all you're getting is the opportunity to have someone tell you you either got it right or you get to do it over, because the appellate division doesn't fix it. They just say, you got it right or you got it wrong. Now go back and do it over again. Do it over again. Who wants to do that? They didn't want to do it the first time, probably. Right? I mean, so I think that's one of them. And the other is, you have to do this whole process formally, like a trial, and you don't, and so like the inability to do appeal is a concern. And then, wow, this seems like really complicated if I had to do it myself, or even if I brought lawyers, I don't know why that would be any less expensive than a trial, but it is, because you're going to do what needs to be done in the process. The most important thing in an arbitration is the agreement to arbitrate. How are we doing this? Who are you picking? Which, again, in many states, you want to pick someone who has family law experience, and many judges in many states do not.
Mm-hmm.
They never did family law before they got on a bench. You have complicated issues. You want someone who knows the law and what they're doing.
So when you're in the courtroom trying a case or defending whatever
Yeah.
side that you're on,
Yeah.
it's not, you don't think of a plaintiff in the same way you do, other types of those kinds of issues. But when you present that, you're telling me that the judge this could be his first family
Yes.
law case.
Yes.
They don't necessarily handle just family law. They handle all
Could have
kinds
been
of
a
issues.
complex commercial litigator, bankruptcy attorney. Sure.
Oh, that's really, I didn't realize
Scary.
that.
Oh, yeah. It's scary sometimes. And here's the other reason why I say arbitration. Listen, in this day and age, this is now how courts happen a lot, not trials, but courts happen like this. And they're not as crowded as they used to be when everybody came in and other people were there. And anybody can walk into a courtroom and watch your divorce trial. And your neighbors could come in and watch if they wanted. Arbitration's private. It's confidential. None of that ever. If you have issues you don't really want ever to be in the public, you go to arbitration. It's out. None of that gets out into the public. Yeah, but you're right. The judge doesn't necessarily have family law experience.
So if you're doing mediation, so I'm just curious, so Would you, so if someone approaches you, let's say the wife says, yeah, let's mediate this, and the husband says, okay, and then they um, one of them approaches you, how does the other one, well, you approached her, so she's representing you, so I don't know whether I want to, do you have that issue come up?
I do sometimes. And generally, when somebody reaches out to me for mediation, they say, hey, I wanted to reach out and talk about mediation. I'm curious. And like somebody recommended you. I say, great, let's schedule a call with your spouse so that we're all on the phone together and discuss what this process is. If you think that they're willing to do that, I will do that I don't charge to do that. I'll spend 15 minutes and walk through what the process is. And if this sounds like something that will work for the two of you, then great, we'll get started. Because I say to them, how would you feel if your husband or wife came to you with like three names they've talked to everybody already, and now, but you haven't had any opportunity to be in there? I just find it much better, and everybody hears the same information all at once. And if it works for you, we'll get started.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I was thinking that
Yeah.
would be a big objection. You've handled division of complex assets like crypto, restricted stock units, closely held businesses. What's the messiest asset you ever had to untangle in a divorce?
Gosh, that's a good one. I think right now, I think one of the messiest is we have a large art collection in a case. And it's difficult because everybody is attached to the art, not necessarily for the monetary value, but for other value. Like, right. And so it's like like the husband wants this piece, not because it's worth 10,000, but because it's sentimental for how he acquired it and he loves what it depicts and everything else. And we tried to get an expert to come in and value the collection, and the cost to value the collection from an expert was like a ridiculous number. So the parties are going to go to trial about this because neither of them could agree on how you divided all of it. They divided some, they were able to divide some, but the rest of it, they're so caught up in the value versus the sentimental, the personal, the emotional value, and they can't make a decision. So judge, who also is not a art expert, is going to have to make a decision. And it's sort of sad. Like if you've acquired this artwork and over many, many years, you're okay. I mean, you're going to have somebody who knows nothing about it divide it for you.
That is tough.
Yeah.
So you wrote a piece called "College Contribution: A Contrarian View." What's the contrarian take on?
So the contrarian take is New Jersey is a minority where you child support goes through college usually, if the children go to college. So college costs are considered an issue of child support. It's not a separate, so they consider it to be a child support issue. So we can order parents to pay for the children's college education, divorced parents. We're like in the minority of states that still do that. And so
Yes.
I took the position in my article, and I still take the position that we shouldn't be ordering parents in a divorce situation to be paying for the college education of their children, sometimes 100% of it, when they probably never would have or couldn't afford it. When you can't, I couldn't tell my best friend who's been married for 25 years, I'm going to order you to pay your children's college education because you're married. Like I can't, there's no case that says you could do that. There almost was one. And I said, so why are we treating divorced parents who actually are going to have less assets because you just divided a household, that they have to do that? I just think I said, and particularly given the cost of college these days. I mean, it's more expensive than a house for some people.
It doesn't seem that contrarian, but I guess it's settled law in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So
Contrary to the law says you should, I say you shouldn't.
yeah, I tend to take your tack too.
Right.
So you trained as a parent coordinator and get appointed by judges. What does that role look like?
Oh, so a parent coordinator is essentially an arbitrator for making parenting decisions. So if the parties come to me and they have a consent order or a settlement agreement and they have a disagreement on an issue, not necessarily even in the agreement itself, but if they are disagreeing about something related to their children, not money, not child support, but decisions about their child, I am going to help them do that. I'm going to try to help them make a decision, but if they can't, I am going to issue what's called a recommendation, which is binding on them. So essentially, I'm an arbitrator for parenting decisions. That's the easiest way to explain it.
It's interesting. So do you have, this is just totally off subject, but do you have
Yeah.
some of your own kids?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I would think that that would give you a little more wisdom on the issue.
Yeah, I do have some of my own kids. I have lots of nieces and nephews and lots of friends with kids. Yeah, kids I tend to be very protective of kids. It's why I do that role, and it's why I've been appointed as a guardian ad litem in the past, because that is sort of the investigator in terms of the best interest of the child. So
Yeah.
I love that role.
If you didn't have, I would ask a different question to follow up
Yeah.
there. But so here's I do I always use rapid fire because they're just kind of fun. So
Yeah.
Notre Dame favorite campus memory.
Um, Lou Holtz, when I was a student manager my freshman year, asking me if I was okay after one of the players came running out of bounds and slammed into me and knocked me down and then pulled me up. And Lou Holtz yelling down the field, "You okay, hon?" "I'm okay, coach. My brother hits me harder." So,
So worst advice you hear from people going through a divorce.
oh
Or
God.
you no, worst advice you hear people give someone going through a divorce.
Mm, that you should fight for every last dollar, or
Okay.
you're entitled to that. Yes, you're entitled, but do you wish to go through trial and waste 3 years, or is there a compromise position? I'm not telling you're not entitled to it, but people will say, no, absolutely not. You have to fight, go to court, go to trial. You go to trial for that.
Courtroom habit that drives judges crazy.
Mine or anybody's.
Yours.
I say mine or anybody's. Mine is probably that I pace. I have a tendency to pace. I've gotten better about it, but I have a tendency to pace. So I'm gently moving, and they're like, "Well, you keep moving." I said, "But you're not supposed to be focused on me. You're supposed to be focused on the witness. Who cares where I am?"
Well, you're like a TV attorney then.
Yeah,
Guilty.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's very interesting. So yeah, so that I would say that and I think the other really bad habit, really on a professional level, is interrupting either the judge or the other attorney. That you depending upon the judge, you're gonna really irritate a judge. Bad
Yep.
habit.
Guilty pleasure TV show.
Hmm. Oh gosh, I tend to watch them. I'm watching Matlock right now. I love Kathy Bates.
Okay.
I like Kathy Bates. She's great, so that's one.
One thing every prenup should include that most people skip.
Mm. A provision to arbitrate the issue of the prenup in the event that you get a divorce.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Best part of being a lawyer that has nothing to do with the law.
Getting to help people in my area, getting to help people and trying to get them through something that is probably one of the hardest things in their lives. They always say, right, getting married or divorced, buying a house and having a child. I'm like, those are probably the three most stressful. My goal, and again, divorce without the drama, my goal is to get them through it as best as possible, as best a result, with the best result for them, and move on.
So you served as president of the New Jersey chapter of the AAML. Only about 45 attorneys in the state are fellows. What does the fellowship actually require?
So, in order to be a fellow of the Academy, you are required to take a national test. You have to be certified in New Jersey. Then you take the test that is administered on a national basis for the Academy, which I say is probably akin to the bar exam. And then you are interviewed by fellows in your state and asked a series of questions. And then they either pass you on or they make some commentary, but you have to pass an exam and an interview before you're accepted.
So what is the benefit either for you and for your potential clients of you belonging to that organization?
So I would say that being a fellow of the Academy is really great on multiple levels. One, I now have a network that expands nationally, and we all know these days that people's assets aren't only generally in one state, not even one
Mhm.
country. And I have a really great network of colleagues who I know are at the top of they're at the top of their professional careers. I mean, they're at the top of the profession, and there's about 1,300 of us across the United States. So I can pick up a phone at any moment and ask any one of them a question, and I have no hesitation about sending people to someone. Even if I haven't met them, I know who they are, I know what the caliber is. The other, I think, really great aspect of it is the colleagues themselves. I mean, they really all willing to help, collegial, in terms of a larger bar or network. I think it's really wonderful. And I think the last part is that the conferences that I attend, the continuing education that we get at those conferences are by and far some of the best seminars I attend every year. I never leave without like 4 or 5 really great things that I have learned that are just like one step above, right? Just one more nuance above that I
Hmm.
can take back and use to benefit my clients.
Okay, I like that. So you sat on the New Jersey Supreme Court's Family Practice Committee. Uh, was there one rule that you helped shape um, that people going through divorce should know about or would like to know about?
So yeah, I worked on the child support guidelines, the calculations. The year I was on the Supreme Court Practice Committee, we were considering the new numbers to be used, having then gone through actuarial calculations for costs of living over the past 5 years, which involved COVID. One of the years we were evaluating was COVID, like 2020 and 2021. And
Yeah.
there were a lot of questions about those. Should we even be looking at those years? Or are
Hmm.
they just so anomalous that they're going to skew the numbers in a direction that, whether it's up or down, they're just going to skew the numbers in a way that is going to be such an anomaly that we shouldn't use them. And I laugh. I like numbers because I say numbers can be manipulated, but they don't lie. And so I read all the actuarial numbers and I talked to the actuary that we were working with about them. And I challenged him on some of the calculations that he was doing and the analyses, not because I'm a math, but like because of the premise of everything and underlying. So we had a lot of conversations about that and tried to get to the point where we were actually coming up with numbers that were fair and accurately reflected what we needed to do to arrive at child support for New Jersey. So I thought
Hmm.
that was really interesting.
That is interesting. But I just had a funny thought flipping around in the back of my mind. There was a Mark Twain where he said, "There's lies, damnable lies, and then there's statistics."
Right? Yeah.
Anyway, when you said about numbers, I don't know why
Yeah.
that just popped in my
Yeah.
head.
Love Mark
So
Twain.
you were just named New Jersey Biz leader in the law. What does leading a family law group inside a construction focused firm look like?
It's interesting. It looks like educating. I mean, listen, when I joined them and I said to them, I said, family law is very different than other areas of law. You sure you want to do this? I said, listen, I'm game, you're game. And they said, yeah, yeah, it seems interesting. We want to be able to, offer additional services for our
Yep.
clientele and whatever else. And I said, great. So what does it look like? It looks like a lot of education of how family law works and is different to all the rest of the partners. Um, and it looks like getting creative and leading my team. I mean, I spent last week with my team, or actually earlier this week with my team, talking to them about the marketing plan for the entire department, because we market differently than a construction, right? I mean, I have
Hmm.
to go get a client every day. They have companies they represent that don't typically change.
Right.
They can go get more, but it's not that kind of business development. So I sat down with my team and I said, here's what our marketing needs to look like, and here's how I see you marketing and business developing if you wish. And I spent time talking to each one of them and learning, really, because I know them, but learning more about what makes them unique and what they want to do and developing a plan for them. And so I think that's what it looks like in terms of, learning from each other and taking some information back and forth, and a lot of explanation.
So you're really kind of like a law firm within the law firm,
Yeah.
so that this gives you a lot more flexibility than you had in the past, rather than less flexibility, which is what you generally expect when you went off and joined another law firm. So
Yeah,
that's interesting.
correct. I think one of the things, Zane, to be honest, is like particularly in law, the business side and in law, I think you have to think about the opportunity you want and you have to find it, right? You can't just make the assumption, because that's what you said is exactly what people said to me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're going to go, you're going to have no autonomy. It's going to be terrible. You're going to have all these, committee, whatever it
Hmm.
was." And I said, depends on what the real opportunity is and the firm, right? You have to find the right spot.
Yep. So if somebody says, "Oh, that Carolyn, she sounds terrific. I need to get set up. My husband is a dog. I need to figure this out." How do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So they can call my office in Newark, 973-474-5003, or they can send me an email and say they saw me here. It's CDALY at Cohen, Cohen, Seglias, Seglias.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. Come find me.
Okay, thanks for coming on, Carolyn. I really appreciate it. You're a good guest.
Yeah. Thank
So